It's hard to describe the weight of absence. It isn't the silence that haunts you, it's the echo. The echo of a goodbye that never came, of promises left unfulfilled, of truths buried too deep to ever surface. This is the story of Emily Carter, a woman who lost her husband, Jake, to a world he swore to protect. Jake wasn't just a police officer, he was her anchor, loyal, steadfast, the kind of man who never hesitated to step into danger if it meant keeping others safe. On a rainy night much like this one, Jake answered what seemed like an ordinary call. But he never came home. They called it a tragedy, a fatal mistake in a dangerous line of work. The official story was simple. Jake had been ambushed responding to a domestic disturbance. It all sounded so cut and dry, too neat, too final. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that they weren't telling her everything. And the worst part? No one seemed to care. For 6 months, Emily lived with that gnawing doubt. 6 months of replaying every detail, every conversation, 6 months of silence. And then, one night, the silence broke. She was in the garage, sorting through Jake's old things, looking for a shred of comfort in the chaos he left behind. His police radio sat on a dusty shelf, a relic of a life that felt more like a dream with each passing day. On a whim, she turned it on. Static filled the room, a dull hum that seemed to match the rhythm of the rain. But then, through the crackle, she heard a voice. "Emily, can you hear me?" She froze. The voice, it was his, Jake's voice. Clear, familiar, impossible. Her breath hitched as her heart thundered in her chest. The world seemed to tilt as she stared at the radio, unable to speak, unable to breathe. "Listen to me. You're in danger. They didn't tell you the truth. Look in my locker at the station. Be careful who you trust." And then, silence. The rain outside seemed louder now, drowning out her thoughts as she sat there, paralyzed by the impossibility of what she had just heard. Jake was gone. Buried. This couldn't be real. Could it? But his words echoed in her mind, a quiet plea she couldn't ignore. By morning, she found herself standing in front of his locker at the station, her hands trembling as she turned the key. The sergeant on duty didn't ask any questions. Maybe he didn't care, or maybe he already knew. Inside, hidden beneath a pile of old case files and uniforms, was a small metal box. Her fingers brushed against its cold surface as she pulled it free. Inside was a single USB drive. Written on the label, in Jake's sharp handwriting, was one word: corruption. What she uncovered left her breathless. Jake had been investigating something dangerous. There were names, transactions, photos, evidence of deep-seated corruption within the force. Officers taking bribes, covering up crimes, silencing those who got too close. Jake had been so close to exposing the truth. Too close. That night, the rain fell harder. Emily sat at the kitchen table, staring at the USB drive, her thoughts a storm of fear and grief. The files weren't just dangerous. They were a death sentence, and someone knew she had them. Outside, through the curtain of rain, she saw it. A black car parked down the street. Its engine silent, its headlights off. She wasn't imagining it anymore. She was being watched. Her phone buzzed on the table. An unknown number flashed across the screen. She answered, and a voice, cold and unfamiliar, delivered a chilling message. "You should have stayed quiet. Jake should have stayed quiet. Now, you'll pay the price." The call ended abruptly, leaving her frozen in place. She looked at the radio, and as if on cue, it crackled back to life. Jake's voice broke through once more, urgent and unmistakable. "Emily, you have to leave. Now. Take the USB and go to the address in the file. Trust no one. This time, she didn't hesitate. She grabbed the USB, her car keys, and bolted out the door. The rain battered the windshield as she sped into the night. The USB clenched tightly in her hand. Behind her, headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, growing closer with every turn. She could feel the weight of Jake's sacrifice, his voice echoing in her mind. He had died for the truth, and now it was her turn to finish what he started. Sometimes the line between loyalty and betrayal isn't just thin, it's invisible. The people you trust can become the ones you fear, and the ones you lose can become the only ones who guide you. The rain continued to fall as Emily drove further into the darkness, her mind racing with questions and a USB heavy in her pocket. She didn't know who to trust, where to go, or how deep the corruption went. But she did know one thing: she wouldn't stop. Not until the truth came to light. For Jake, for justice, for all the voices silenced before they could be heard. Because in the end, when the rain clears and the silence returns, the truth is all that's left.